People answer the definition of fascism by the definition of fascism. There are three pillars in fascism. The first pillar of fascism is, it's crazy.
We have the traumas of our colonizers.
Exactly, yeah. Californian transhumanism, big tech people, they are fascist, pure fascist.
Well, do you know that Modi is a fascist leader and our country will slowly become the biggest fascist state of entire history? And not only this, there are a lot of fascist allegations on the government of India and Indian politics. And if we talk about our analysis from Kutniti.watch, I believe during the election seasons also, and especially after the arrest of Arvind Kejriwal, there are high allegations of Indian government turning into a fascist ones.
Not only in foreign press, I think even in Indian media, it's there.
Yes, I feel that Indian press, opposition leaders and Gemini AI also like to label Indian government as a fascist ones. So what is your observation on this?
I think the first problem is, if you look at what is fascism, why people use the word fascist in particular, is in the history of the West, they think that is the worst thing that happened to them. And why not? Like if the West want to think that fascism is the worst thing that happened to them, why not? But if you look closely, it's an ideology that started as a reaction to communism, to the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917 in Italy, and then propagated around Europe. And it ended in 1945 with the death of both Mussolini and Hitler. From there, people call neo-fascism after 1945, and the real neo-fascism dies in 1974, 1975 with the death, with the end of the governments of Salazar and Franco in Portugal and Spain. From them, there is not much fascism in the world. The problem of fascism is the fact that if you look first at the definition of fascism, and Gottfried in his book talks quite nicely about that, people answer the definition of fascism by the definition of fascism. Basically, fascism is bad, so what is fascism? It's bad. The terms, first, every definition of fascism, if you look online, are very different, but they will be around, it's a dictatorship, it's not good, it's authoritarian, it's pro-military, it's super-nationalistic, everything. Which is the case of most of the governments in the history of mankind. Any king in the past was fascist then. Today, so many countries in the world would be fascist, if it was a definition. For me, the problem of, the definition is not very clear, and don't go to the fundamentals of this movement that describe its real ideology. It shaped the history of the 20th centuries in the West. But we need to be a bit precise about what is fascism to answer if Modi is a fascist or not.
Well, recently I read an article from Pakistani media where they were talking about how Indian government is an economic failure and how women are being suppressed. And surprisingly, the title of that article was "Who is a fascist?" So basically, they were talking about fascism, but they were not talking anything about the definition or something of that sort. They were just talking about economy of India.
Yeah.
So what do you think could be the possible measures through which we can define what fascism actually is?
It's a very good question. In fact, if we go down to what is really fascism, and if you want to use the word properly, because you cannot use allegations and words to describe, especially like a head of state of a sovereign nation, to label someone fascist like this. If you don't like Modi, it's fine, no problem. But you need to use, especially if you're a journalist from a major media in the world and everything, or worse, an Indian journalist, you need to have a bit of knowledge about what is fascism. So if we go down to the core of fascism, there are three pillars in fascism. The first pillar of fascism is anti-communism. It's a reaction of communism. And in fact, fascism and communism are very, very similar. They are both socialist movements from the west of Europe of the beginning of the 20th century. And one is a reaction to the other. So at core, if you're a fascist, you want to fight communism. It's like there are many ideologies in the world that have not much, ideology, but they are really a reaction of something else. So let's answer, is Modi someone where his core DNA is to be anti-communist? Not really. He's not a communist. I'm sure he doesn't like communists at all. But his definition, he doesn't label himself, and his whole ideology is not let's fight fascism. Communism. It's there in some parts of West, the east part of India, or, in the south, in some parts of the south of India. But let's be honest, the core of Modi is not to be anti-communist. The second thing, which is even more important, is as a fascist, and that's why I think that's why it's a difference between fascism and just a king who's authoritarian in the past, is the fact that you want to create a new man. That's very, very important in fascism. You want to get rid of the past. The past will just become, like something in history books. You don't want to connect much to your past, and you want to create today a new man of the future. So you want to be elitist. You want to have a pyramid shape with some elite people who will pull, the others, because you cannot create a new man for the whole country. So you will take few people in the country, they will become the new man, and they will inspire the others to become a new man. And if some people cannot fit to this vision of a new man, or new woman for sure, they will be, eliminated or put on the side of the society at some point. So that's really something which is the core, for me, the core point of fascism. If we had to keep one thing, it's that. So now, is Modi, for this ideology? Not at all. He's a conservator. He likes the history of India. He's pushing, rebuilding temples, putting the glory of people from, the independence of India or some old kings, he's praising the whole, enormous history of India. So he's not at all someone who's, pushing a new man. If you ask India what is the project of the new man of Modi, there is no answer because there is no project. There is no such project. There. And he's not elitist, he's trying to cater to all parts of the population. He's a real politician. He's trying to make everyone happy enough, to have votes because he's in a democracy. So that works in a democracy, you need to make everyone happy. And I'm not saying he's managing that perfectly for everyone, but he's trying basically to cater to everyone. There is absolutely no project of a new man of India. It's a very conservative, he's a very conservative person. And then the third point is more on the business side. When you're a fascist, you want really to control the economy and to have, a full, centralized economy, which is, again, communism. Basically, they are very, very close to communists on that front. Look at, the economy under Hitler or, Mussolini, how it was. And there, again, Modi is not like that at all. He's quite liberal. For sure, he wants to retain some power in the government. He's not someone who will privatize the nuclear sector, some energy sector or some stuff, but he's also privatizing. Air India was privatized last year to Tata. He's pushing startups. You cannot have a fascist, government praising startups and expecting, a whole startup scene to create products and technology and hardware and everything. That's totally anti-fascist at core. So again, if you take the three pillars of fascism that make fascism different from, a regular authoritarian ideology, anti-communist is not, creating a new man is not, and centralizing the economy in a communist way is not. So yeah, he's not a fascist at all. Clear answer. Anyone who tells the other way around has no understanding about what is fascism.
Well, actually, if we analyze what is written in the articles, which usually, I would say, propagate that there is rise of fascism in India, they usually talk about suppression of minorities and how there is no freedom of press, for which they also quote some press freedom indexes and how opposition leaders are being jailed.
But that's not fascism. If you don't like Modi, again, no problem. That's it's an authoritarian regime, or again, you're against the freedom of speech, but there are words for that. You cannot use other words. And the word pass of that is when it's used by Indian people. If basically the only reason you use fascism is because fascism is bad and I think that Modi is bad, so I want to do an association and basically portray him as Hitler, that's the only thing you have in your mind, then again, if a Jewish person or if a Britisher does that, I have no problem. Because really in their history, fascism was something that harmed their, core nation or whatever. But in India, did we suffer from fascism? No, it's again something from another part of the world. We should use something like, I don't know, like the Mughals, we suffered from Mughals. Or the colonial Britain, we suffered from, colonialism. But today, people will use Mughal as a good term, as something like, oh, Mughal is strong, instead of using it, to label something bad, or the British Raj or whatever, So I think we are having a very, very poor choice of vocabulary there.
So we need to decolonize our criticism.
Yeah, even there we are still, using the terms and we use the fear and, the traumas of the West to ourselves where we don't have the same history. It's crazy.
We have the traumas of our colonizers.
Exactly, yeah. We got that from them also, yeah.
So if not Modi, but do you think that there is any other government in the world which is a fascist government?
No, again, fascism was during a very short period of time, between basically the end of World War I. It was thriving between both world wars. The World War II was a direct consequence of fascism. You had a bit of neo-fascism after that, and that's it. There is no fascist government in the world. It's an ideology that doesn't exist in the world. And there are many governments in the world I don't like. I never label them as fascist because this ideology doesn't exist today in any government in the world.
So I feel that it was basically formed to fight communism.
Yeah.
But now communism is not left at state level, but it is in people's hearts and minds.
Yeah.
So do you think that fascism has been abolished from the state level, but it is still left in some of people's hearts and minds, and the ideology for which I would say the ideology with which people try to navigate and build societies?
There are few people who still believe in fascism, but honestly, in the world, it's 0.00. It's a very, very small thing. But then if we look let's use again the three principles I mentioned. Let's see if some things in the world are fascist without being governments. And the answer is yes. There are some, there is fascism in the world outside governments. So one would be maybe a bit shocking, but sports is purely fascist. Don't laugh, it's true. Sport is fascist. It's a pure definition of fascism, you don't want, equality. You will praise one person or very few people at the top, and the rest will be, totally in the shadows. The few people will be praised and be famous and have all the glory. It's purely fascist. Your goal is to fight the past. You say, okay, the past is great, but I'll be better than the past. You want to beat the records. You want to be better than the past and everything. And, cast a shadow on the people in the past and be, again, something super, super elitist. And so, yeah, sport is really, really fascist in a way. And there is one more thing. One more thing is fascist in the world right now. It's the Californian big tech transhumanism movement. So I know if you know, but in California, there is this whole movement where, especially the big tech CEO, CXO level people, they want to not die. They want to be, like a new man. They want to take new treatments and everything. And there are a lot of people, who are trying to fight death, basically. And they want to be immortal. And overall, the big tech sector, if you look at it, they want to become governments above governments. They don't want communism at all. They don't want people to have any access to the means of production. And the means of production today are AI, algorithm, data. That's the means of production, the strongest ones of today. So they don't want that to be in the hands of the people. They want to capture that, at their level. They want the economy to revolve around themselves. And they want to be Übermensch, men above the rest who will never die, while the regular people will still be, facing disease and death and this kind of thing. So if you look at it, if you ask me where is fascism in the world right now, Californian transhumanism, big tech people, they are fascist, pure fascist.